Hi. Greetings from Wisdom Lord Raphael. Before we start, please hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell icon and don't miss any content. This is the light novel of that time I got reincarnated as a slime. If you haven't watched previous video, I will leave the link on the description box, or you can click here. Let's start. This is Tensura Light Novel Volume 17. Tensura Light Novel. Volume 17. Fragments Across Space-Time. Chapter 2. Distant Memories. Reminisce of Past. After the main conference was over, the first thing Valgrind did was to go to the main library. It is no exaggeration to say that the library had a huge collection of books on its vast floor. The reason why she went there is because there was something that was said in the meeting that bothered her. It was the names of nations and some of the names of people. For example, the Holy Arsha Empire. This seems to have some connection to the Arsha kingdom she led. Or the name of the President of the United States of Azalia, George Hayes, apparently, is the same one she had contact with before the space-time leap. If Valgrind's memory was correct, his father was the owner of his piece of Rudra's soul. His name was Laurent Hayes, and she was with him from his youth until he died a mortal death. There are many other things she was curious about, but she had to look into those matters. If they were in the same world, she could be sure that they were the same nation and the same person, but there are also similar worlds in other dimensions. Since there are clear differences in the origins and laws of the world, it is concluded that it is not a parallel world, but for some reason the names are similar again. The possibility of this being a coincidence was undeniable, so Valgrind decided to look into the history. The first thing she looked up was the origins of the Holy Arsha Empire, and the description of the Arsha kingdom was confirmed. She recognized the name of the king and his chief advisors, and she was convinced that this world was descended from the Arsha kingdom. Next, she looked up George Hayes. Oh, that's right. His father's name was Laurent Hayes. He was the president 7 generations ago, so that must be it. So, George Kun could have been president, too. Valgrind smiles, remembering the respect George had for his father. He wanted to be a great president, just like his father. Laurent died at the age of 62, while George was only 27 then. Today's George is 52 years old, so in this space-time leap, she appeared 25 years later in the same world. 25 years ago, Akira Sakura would have been alive and well, so someone with a piece of Rudra's soul must have existed at the same time. That is a very rare pattern, but since the soul reacts strongly to death, it was not absolutely certain. That is why, while doubting the possibility of another person, she went to the large library in this way. By the way, Laurent was surrounded and almost killed by a gang. It was there that Valgrind was called in to rescue him, which is how she got to know Laurent. Remembering that, Valgrind feels nostalgic. She switches her mind and resumes her research. George Kun had a little boy, right? Valgrind gave her blessing, so there's no doubt about it. She checked the names in the book of names and found his son's name was listed. Emile Hayes. She was convinced that it was no longer doubtful because it matched a name she remembered. Valgrind nods with satisfaction. It was then that she discovered an entry in the biographical directory that bothered her. Was it my fault that Laurent's marriage was delayed? She grumbled in dissatisfaction. Don't be ridiculous, she thought. Laurent Hayes had a shadow of a beautiful woman who had always followed him around, and so on, according to the biographical data. It was true, but Valgrind was neither aware nor malicious in heart. Therefore, she dissatisfied with this. She always said he was free to fall in love, and she never meant to hold Laurent back. But there are certainly not many women who would court a man with such a beautiful woman at his side. By all accounts, it was Valgrind who was responsible for the considerable delay in Laurent's marriage. I don't know who wrote this, but I'd like to complain about it. The author was long dead, but that may have been fortunate in a way. Even after she had finished her research, Valgrind was enjoying her free time. There was no one to stop her. The only one who could was Akira, but he was the one who let Valgrind do what she wanted. Because he instinctively knew that this would lead to the most benign outcome. Of course, there were those who would get involved with Valgrind. Not the soldiers who knew her true nature, but their wives. The Empress, Akira's wife, was one of them. What a mess. A woman who doesn't know the bones of any horse approaches his majesty before he knows it. It was a fight from the very beginning. The Empress, from the Duke's family, was 50 years old. The Empress was still full of energy at this time when the average age was about 60 years old due to the development of medicine and magic. Nevertheless, for Valgrind, she was still pretty. This had happened a lot during the long time she had spent with Rudra. Oh my, you'll ruin your pretty face if you get so angry. I think even Akira Sakura would want his wife to always be beautiful. And then she refused to fight with her. And then she even patted the Empress's face. I'm going to teach you a breathing technique to regulate your energy so you can practice it properly. What? The Empress was stunned. This is exactly what it means to be unable to speak. The wives of the high-ranking officials who followed her are looking at her the same way. After all, the Empress had regained her beauty right before their eyes. They were right to be amazed. You don't think? That's the secret of rejuvenation. They muttered to no one, but Valgrind laughed and denied it. That's not rejuvenation. This is just a way to revitalize your cells and make you look better. It doesn't change your race, and your lifespan remains finite. There is a finite lifespan. Valgrind explained that she only activated the cells by manipulating the spirit of life and thus could not extend their lifespan, but this was misleading. From the perspective of Valgrind, it is a small margin of error, but the life is extended. It makes the body healthier and cures it of most diseases. The energy intake would be more efficient and one would have a perfect resistance to aging. As a result, the life expectancy of the Empress was more than doubled. If you learn and practice breathing techniques from Valgrind, you will live a longer life. Ryu-sama, I'm afraid I was wrong about you. The Empress instantly fell in love with Valgrind. Of course, the same was true of her attendants. Me too. I as well. I'd love for you to teach us how to breathe. They shouted out, tried desperately to regain their youth. It has been a few days since Valgrind arrived in this world. Teaching the ladies breathing techniques and enjoying tea times, Valgrind was gracefully at ease. The military, on the other hand, has been busy. Discussions with the leaders of each country were difficult and the prospects for meetings were unclear. Due to lack of progress, the main conference has been cancelled. Instead of wasting time on useless meetings, it has been decided that the effort should be focused on something constructive. Akira Sakura has given his permission. So Valgrind has no complaints. But the frustration is growing. They were losing valuable time. Even while doing this, it seems that the demons are ready, so if they don't do it early, they will not be able to hold international meetings. In that case, they would have to leave before humanity could come together. Although it's an enemy country, it was the same in that they were used by demons. That's why they didn't despise them, and they handled it well. But they still couldn't get to the meeting because of the turmoil within the United States. The imperial side knew that too, and that's why they couldn't push it through. But that was none of Valgrind's business. Come on, call your president, George Kun. I don't understand you. And it's not polite to mention the president's name so casually. You know he is busy here. If you tell him that Valgrind is calling, I'm sure he'll listen to you. What did you say? There was a hint of confusion on the other end, but Valgrind cut the communication. Since the alleged enemy president of the United States of Azalia is acquainted with her, there is no way to take advantage of that. The rest is up to them. If she can get a message to President George, then they can move quickly. Otherwise, she would be going to go to them herself. That is where she was 25 years ago, so she has the coordinates for George's country. The space-time lapse was also reflected in the coordinates, so spatial transportation could be performed without any problem. If I don't hear from him after a day of waiting, I'll go to him. So Valgrind decided to approach the Holy Arsha Empire this time. She had an idea of how to handle those negotiations as well. She precisely manipulated their magical communication circuits and connected them to the channel in an instant. She called up the number and made her demands unilaterally. Tell the Emperor that he must do as I ask. Then I will provide you with another sacred artifact. Sword, spear, bow, whatever you wish. I, Valgrind, will make you a promise so you should move quickly. The person being told is puzzled. They don't remember being obliged to obey a woman who calls herself Valgrind, but the call is on a formal international line. There was no option to ignore it. However, there was no way he could see the Emperor as a communications officer, even if he wanted to. The real intention was not to make a mess. But he still reported to his superiors. The reason being the word sacred artifact. In the Holy Arsha Empire, there was a fighting group that was well known in other lands. As a national force, they are known as the 7 sacred vessels. These 7 possess abilities beyond human knowledge, but it is their weapons that are the most famous. Only when they are chosen to be owners of the weapons can they call themselves one of the 7 vessels. This story has been handed down since the beginning of the nation's history and is known to all of Arsha's people. Of course, others knew it, but it was a great sin to speak of it so casually. That's more than one man would ever say in a conversation on the phone between nations. Since the contents of the communication were recorded as evidence, it was no wonder the war had escalated because of it. That is why there was no choice but to tell them. Anticipating this, Valgrind's negotiating skills were evident. But it was awful for those who were listening. It was enough with the United States of Azalia. No, it's not good, but I would argue that you're not the only one responsible. But there's no excuse for the Holy Arsha Empire. Yes, that's right. Moreover, using an alias is a brazen thing to do. It'll be found out and we'll be in big trouble. Valgrind had no intention of using a false name, but to an uninformed person, it seemed like she was trying to deceive them. It was a misunderstanding, but Valgrind was too lazy to explain, so she let it slide. Either way, it's up to them. There was no point in making a fuss here. That's how Valgrind finished her preparations. Ignore the complaints. Gracefully, she prepared a cup of tea and enjoyed it while waiting for word. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs Chief of Intelligence fell silent, looking furious. Depending on how the other side responds, he'd do whatever it took to blame Valgrind. I'll give you credit for being strong, girl. But I'm not fooled. I kept silent because I was in front of His Majesty, but I imagine that she has a mind to deceive us with her grandiose lies, while everyone's minds are weak. He was engulfed in fumes during the main conference, but in retrospect, Valgrind's story is too wild to be true. If they are true, there is no hope left for mankind. No matter how powerful Valgrind is, they are no match for the mythical army. With that in mind, the official's hostility toward the Valgrind was growing. It was the flip side of his fear, but he was unaware of it. He just drowned his fears in anger. And then he waits for a while. Valgrind. It's me, Valgrind. The call was from the United States of Azalia. This is surprisingly fast compared to usual. And there's no doubt in her mind who the caller is. Oh, George Kun, right. I hear that you're the president now. I wish Lauren could have seen you as a grown-up. It was President George himself. Oh, you really are Valgrind. I'm so glad. I didn't think I'd ever hear from you again. Those who were listening to the conversation were amazed beyond words. Wasn't Valgrind a fake name? No, that's not important. I seriously don't understand how Ryo Dono could know the president. The senior official was also confused. He was about to dismiss her as an insolent liar, and now he's developed respect for her. Valgrind didn't care what people thought. So, George Kun. I'm sorry, but we have to get to the important stuff first and can catch up later. Do you understand the situation? Yes, you're right. I've got something I want to talk to you about too. Can you listen to me after this matter? Of course. You're Lawrence's pride and joy, so you're like a child to me too. Thank you. That's a relief to hear. So, it's quite a situation, but I think we'll have to reconcile it. I agree. So, then, can you agree to what we ask of you? Not a problem. When will the meeting take place? I'll check with Rudra the Emperor and get back to you. Well, so there was another one at the same time as my father, wasn't there? All right. I can't wait right here, but I'll make arrangements to be available at any time. And so, the call ended. Valgrind had successfully made an appointment with the president. It wasn't long before word from Arsha arrived. Is Valgrind Sama there? It's me. Excuse me. I am Bright, first chair of the 7 vessels of the Holy Arsha Empire. I have the honor of speaking with Valgrind Sama, but I would like to confirm one point. What is it? Is it true that you are the goddess herself? What? What's the point of that question? He was talking about how he was going to find out if Valgrind's words were true or false. Or is there anyone still alive who can judge the truth of my words? No, that's not. In the first place, I didn't think the king wouldn't respond to my name when I mentioned it. It's pathetic. Shin's descendants have become so small. Shin. You mean, His Majesty Shin, the Emperor? You are insulting the imperial family of Arsha. And I've been wondering, why are you called the 7 sacred vessels? I left you 12 mythical grade vessels. I don't think it's true, but were they lost or stolen? I mean, what makes you think that there isn't someone out there who's qualified to be a mastermind? Bright's anger fizzled out. The chief of the 7 vessels was convinced at this point. The woman who answered his questions, the one who claimed to be Valgrind, was undoubtedly the true goddess. I remember hearing from my master that there were 12 sacred artifacts. This is a true story that is only survived by oral tradition, so the one who knows this must be the real one. There used to be 12 sacred artifacts. Because they were a national asset and trump card, it was stipulated that only 7 would be disclosed. But that doesn't mean there are 12 owners of the artifacts. As Valgrind pointed out, there were only 8 of them at the moment. In the more than 4,000 years of history of the Holy Arsha Empire, 3 of its sacred artifacts had been lost. 1 betrayal and 2 non-returnees. Now there are only 9 artifacts left in Arsha's possession. And now there is only 1 secret member of the Emperor's secret army and 1 masterless artifact still languishing in a treasure trove of dead treasure. The fact that Valgrind had guessed so well upset Bright. But that's not the only reason. All Bright had to do was to hear Valgrind's voice, and he was overwhelmed. It was more that he sensed that Valgrind's voice was real. So, regardless of what Valgrind said, Bright bowed down to the communications equipment. It didn't matter if he didn't see her or not. It was his respect for Valgrind that made him do it. I'm sorry, goddess. I will immediately send a message to Emperor Arsha and inform him of your request. Oh, really? Well, in that case, it's okay to entrust it to you, so move quickly. Haha. Valgrind wasn't quite ready to complain yet, but she allowed Bright to go ahead with her goal. Thus, the Holy Arsha Empire agreed to her request. That's all for today, hope you guys enjoy it. Please check my other videos. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and hit the notification icon. And don't miss any updates. Thank you for watching.